Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Let's go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 157 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, this is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on the socials at Be Our Guest Mike. You can find me on Facebook, even though, let me just tell you, I don't go on Facebook. I just post to Facebook through other social media platforms. When I post to Instagram, it automatically updates to Facebook. So if you try to get a hold of me on Facebook, usually I'm not on there. So I just apologize for that. I'm not on there. If you're trying to get a hold of me, Twitter or now I guess X is the place to catch me at Be Our Guest Mike. Instagram as well. You can catch me over there. And I'm actually on that new Threads thing too at Be Our Guest Mike. So those are kind of the three places to catch me and interact with me, but mostly still on Twitter. I know I'm old and I just like it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So if you're looking for me, that is kind of the place to find me. But anyway, you know where I am. We're all friends probably. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying cool this summer. The heat wave has arrived here in St. Louis. We're going to have, I think, multiple 100-degree days later this week. It's getting ready to be one of those times of the year where you just stay in your podcast studio in your basement and prepare for the Give Kids the World live shows that are coming up here in September. You start to get the road equipment ready and you stay inside in the cool, I call it the cave here at the Be Our Guest podcast studios in the basement in lovely St. Peters, Missouri, and hope that you can escape the heat because it's going to be a hot one here later this week. I mean, it's already going to be 97 today, but the Cardinals are out in Arizona playing the Diamondbacks this week. And last night, as we were watching my hero, Adam Wainwright, pitch, and he pitched great last night, by the way. Old man hanging on a couple episodes ago. He did great, even though he didn't get the win because they were a bullpen. But they said they started the game at 6:40 p.m. local time out there, 8:40 here in St. Louis. The game time temperature in Phoenix, 111 degrees. If you live out there and they say it's dry heat, I don't care. That's insanity. Then it's been like that, I think, for like 25 days or something in a row. I just don't know how you go outside. Like, I know it gets hot here and we'll have a few 100-degree days every summer. Like I said, we're going to have a couple this week and it gets that way. That's the thing about St. Louis. And I don't know where you live. I know we have listeners all over the world. It's great. I know I was just talking to somebody who's going to come on the podcast next month from the Netherlands. We've had folks come on the show from Australia. We had Malcolm call in Sunday night, got to check in with him from UK. It's awesome. We have a global audience, which is amazing. But here in St. Louis, we kind of get the extremes of the weather. So we're going to have 100-degree days this week. And then in the wintertime, we'll have days where the air temperature we'll get 15, 20 degrees below zero air temperature. So we get the extremes. And so you get it all where we live. I mean, it gets so cold that you can't, it's just like you walk outside and it's just like getting punched in the face. It's so cold, it hurts. And then today, like Pam, my wife, went outside and we have a little lake and she walked her laps around the lake. And I mean, early, and it was still smoking hot already. So you want to know why I walk on the treadmill? Because of where I live. I like to know that I like to get up early in the morning and just know the temperature. It's always 70 in my basement and it's always level and flat and comfortable. So that's why I do what I do. I'm pretty lazy like that. Anyway, hope you're having a great week. Doing well around here. We got some great shows for you this week. Let me just tell you, listener questions were really all over the place this week. So tomorrow you're in for a treat there. We had a super interesting question that kind of led us down a path. One of our listeners asked us about if Disney's Hollywood Studios has lost its identity because it's gone away from things like the Backlot Tour, the Great Movie Ride, the thing where you could go and see how they made the Foley effects, the sounds and stuff like that. Has the studios gotten away from what it was originally meant? So we had a great discussion about that, and we had a lot of great comments while we were recording the show live on social media. So I'll be excited to hear what you think about our discussion on that. And then on Friday, I think we had a really good show too. Not to brag, but I really liked it because it was listener driven. It was another email that I received from a listener, Bill in New York, and it was a listener question, but he had just gotten back earlier this month from a 10-day trip where his family stayed at the Grand Floridian. And he gave me 9 points from his vacation. And so instead of just like jamming that into a listener question show, what we did was we took that on Friday and we took each of his 9 points and read them because they were just like 3 sentences for each point and discussed them. So we talked about how do you feel about the Grand Floridian staying there with a family? He talked about monorail transportation, being somebody who lives in New York City. He talked about the best tour on property he thinks right now going because they did it on their trip. He talked about a great dining / show experience. So this is teasing it, but Friday, I think you'll enjoy that show. And let me tell you one other thing I want to tell you about. If you went on the Be Our Guest podcast cruise, and I know a lot of you on Patreon did sail with us, and I hope you had a great time. I had the best time. Oh, thank you for sailing with us. It was so fun. Thursday night, so in 2 nights, at 8:00 Eastern, we're going to get together right here on the socials, like when we record the shows on Mondays. So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We're going to all get together. Scott and I are going to be live, kind of off to the side, and we're going to premiere the video that Scott has put together of the cruise highlights. Scott has been working super hard on this video. He worked really hard on the original, and then he re-edited the thing like 17 times because there was like minor glitches in it and things with the music, and he didn't like this cut. He's a perfectionist, which I get, but I kept telling him, dude, it's great. It's wonderful. Stop. And he just kept doing it, which I appreciate. So Thursday night, join us for the live premiere. It's going to be kind of fun, so we can comment and type comments while it shows. And then, of course, it'll be available on YouTube to watch whenever you want. You can share it with your friends and your family. A lot of you guys star in the video. I know you're going to be able to see yourself and, see some of the shots that other people took, and maybe you're in other people's, pictures and videos, but it takes you back there. You see a lot of ice cream cones. You see some of us running on Castaway Key. You see a lot of us dining with the Avengers and Spider-Man and Olaf and all kinds of stuff, dressed up at Palo and having fun in the bayou and lots of old fashions. It's so much fun laying in the atrium at the Kiss Goodnight. Even if you didn't sail with us, come on in, join us, because it's really fun to see what the Disney Wish is all about. Scott did a great job capturing the essence of what our community is about, because there's a lot of friends and a lot of people having a good time together. The kids, the teenagers, the adults, just everybody. And he has great music with it too. He did a super job on this video. Like, I was watching it on the treadmill the day he got it finished, and I was kind of tearing up right at the end. I mean, it's that good. So Thursday night, 8:00, right here on the social media channels. Please do join us, and we would love to have you. All right. So let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week, we talked about this time of the year is weird. Is summer half over, or is there still enough summer to embrace? Because you got all of July, you still got August, but how do you feel about that? So Jody chimed in, speaking to somebody who sailed with us. She sailed with us, and she's in the video many times. So hope she joins us out in Cincinnati. She says, finally, I'm caught up on Mike in the Midwest. You talked about getting back in the groove after travel. For me, one of the things is to get my podcast caught up. I hate missing episodes. Jody, I'm the exact same thing. When I get back from traveling, I have like 30 podcasts. The good news is I spend so much time every morning on the treadmill that I do eat through them pretty quickly. And it's kind of a blessing, because a lot of times I get caught up and I'm like, okay, now I got to listen to find stuff. But I get a little anxious when I get a huge queue, because I'm like behind in time. I hate that. Jody continues. As it relates to retiring from a sport when it's time, we are huge soccer fans. And with the Women's World Cup going on right now, there have been some fantastic interviews with former players. I listened to one with Abby Wambach, who talked about having her role switch from a starter in 3 World Cups to coming off the bench in her last World Cup. She talked about how hard it was, but she knew it was the right thing at the end of her career. and her starting would have been detrimental to the team's goal. Oddly enough, that was the one World Cup where they won the tournament. Sometimes it's hard to know when to call it quits, but it's nice when you can go out knowing you have had a great career. That's a great point. But it is so hard to know when that time is. I guess you're at peace with it when you know that, but when do you know? Again, getting back to my favorite Cardinal of all time, Adam Wainwright. He pitched last night for the Cardinals. His last three times out before that, he just got bombed. I mean, and apparently he got just shelled on July 4th. Fortunately, we were on the podcast cruise. I didn't see it, but I heard about it when we got back on land. I'm glad we were out at sea. I wasn't watching the game. I even had my jersey on that day. And then he went on the injured list because his shoulder was giving him trouble. But he came back last night and he pitched great. But if he hadn't pitched well last night, I mean, that could have been it for his career. So I was super nervous all day yesterday. I wore my jersey, just hoped he had a great game, and he had a really good game last night. But it's one of those things like, how do you know? I guess you just know. But I mean, some people just hang on too long. It's sad. And, again, I've said this with my running, I don't want to run, until I can't walk. But I know that the time is coming soon that I got to give up the marathon. Like, I love the feeling of crossing the marathon finish line. It's great. But I've put too many miles on my body too much. Like, and I know people run into their 70s sometimes, but I'm not going to be one of those people because I played a lot of hockey. I played tons of baseball. I've played a lot of contact sports, football. I just can't see myself I'm struggling with my knee health already. So this will be my 10th marathon, knock on wood, this January. I'll be 50. There's a lot of signs with round numbers that this would be a good time to call it my last one, but I'm stubborn. So I don't know. And finally, Jody continues, sidebar. If anyone wants to learn about the most amazing U.S. women's soccer player, read up about Michelle Akers, who played her entire career with chronic fatigue syndrome. It is amazing what true grit and determination can do. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jody, and everybody check that out. Very cool. And I think the women's team won their first game against Vietnam, and I believe they play again tomorrow, Wednesday. Again, I can't remember who they play. I'm terrible, but they do play tomorrow, I believe, Wednesday. All right. We have some more feedback from Michael. Says, hey, Mike, road trips. We have two types. One was to Spokane, Washington, where Michelle and I both grew up, but did not know each other. Those trips were to see my parents until dad passed and to see Michelle's parents until her mom passed. Usually we would drive past the 720 miles straight through with short stops in a few parks and McDonald's with play places. I rigged up a wooden box to hold a small TV. Our 4 kids were troopers and rarely complained. The other types of road trips were to Disneyland. For a while, we made these trips twice a year. Those were even more fun as I would create a special audio playlist for the last hour or so before we got to Anaheim. We loved those trips. However, my son complained once. His birthday is June 5th and was usually spent in the park. He complains that he was never home to have a friend's party. I get it. I understand. Like, sometimes you just want to be home with your friends and have the cake and do what all your friends do. But I mean, Disneyland, right? That's something Mallory and Paige would do too, though. I totally understand. My kids would say the same thing. I'm like, but you're at Disney World or Disneyland. But you miss your friends. I get it. And Michael continues, as for the end of summer, I'll be starting my 36th year as a middle school CS teacher. I'm guessing that's consumer science. Anytime I see a back to school ad in July, I scream. My first contract day is August 11th, and I will have students on August 16th, earliest ever. Summer has gotten shorter every year. Boo. I get it, Michael. Have a great year. Thank you for being there. 36 years. You're a saint. And yeah, summer got shorter every year for me. I only did 17 years. And it's my wife's 24th. And yeah, avoid those back to school ads like they're landmines. Just whenever they come on TV, change the channel. Do whatever you block them out. Go blah, blah, blah. Just don't watch them. It's too soon. It's July. Come on now. But yeah, my wife goes back, I think August 8th is her first contract day. Maybe it's even earlier than that, I think. I know she has like 3 weeks before the kids come back. It's ridiculous how early the teachers come back this year before the kids. They have tons of professional development before the kids come back. It is ridiculous. Anyway, off my soapbox. Christine Arthurs, thank you for being here. She says, as a teacher, I know exactly what you're talking about, Mike. However, in Canada, our dates are a little different. Our last day of work this year was June 29th. Wow. So we're only a little bit into our break and we start again after Labor Day. Our usual date that we start to feel the ticking clock is when July turns to August. That's when you know the end is near and it's time to start thinking about classroom setup, the startup materials, etc. I try not to let myself get into too into prepping for the fall until August, but that date is coming soon. I get it. Man, June 29th, we get out, we always got out in late May. So yeah, that's a little shift. I will say, Christine, last night, so we're sitting in the living room. It's Mallory, my wife, and I, and Pam grabs her laptop, which she has not grabbed her because she uses her laptop. It's Chromebook. She uses her Chromebook every night, to do schoolwork during the school year as we kind of sit in the living room. She's always has a Chromebook in her lap. Well, in the summer, obviously, she never uses her Chromebook when she's playing around. She's always on her phone. So last night, we're sitting there at like 9:00 watching the Cardinals game, and she grabs the Chromebook, opens it up, and immediately Mallory's like, "Why do you got your Chromebook? What are you doing?" Yep, it's Pam was shopping for borders. And if you're a teacher, you know what that means, borders for her bulletin boards. Because again, my wife is in her 24th year of teaching. They're making her change classrooms this coming year because she teaches 4th grade. And the 5th grade's the oldest grade in her building. And the principal wants the 5th graders closest to his office because they were so wild last year that there were so many discipline problems. So they're shifting all the classrooms so the 5th graders are closest to the office, and now the 4th graders will be down further away from the office. It's like everybody now has to move in the building because of the discipline issues with the 5th graders. Does education make sense? Never. So everybody's got to move all their stuff and all that good stuff. So yeah, she's shopping for borders, but it's that time of the year, right? And she is getting smart because we have it's called the teacher store. We have like a store with teacher supplies in our town, but it's always open like whack hours during O week. We call it orientation week, like that week when you go back without students. It's not open late at night, and you can buy everything you can buy at that store on Amazon, and you have infinitely more choices on Amazon. And if you buy them on Amazon, they're just going to come to your house and you don't have to like make the trek. It's like 15 minutes away and you have to go during the school day. I'm all about supporting small businesses in my town. And we always pick up odds and ends out at that place anyway, that you need at the last minute. But why not just grab that stuff right now when you're sitting on the couch? So, and she's using it as an opportunity to redecorate, which I never cared about decorating. I think I told you the story one time. One time we did this new program in my elementary school when I was teaching 6th grade, where we had to have something called a word wall. It was called 4 blocks. It was like the philosophy. Only the teachers will understand this, and only a subgroup of the teachers that know this strategy. It was called 4 blocks. It was like a reading program. And I taught 6th grade. And in this philosophy was that you had to have a bulletin board, and a big one in every classroom, that had like 100 words on the board that kids could see all the time so they didn't misspell them. Now, remember, I taught 6th grade. So like these were like basic words like about, then, the, here, like the different versions of here, HEREAGEAR, there, stuff like that. So I had to make this big, and I kept telling my principal, I'm not making that board. I'm like, they're in 6th grade. They need to know by 6th grade. They don't need to look at a bulletin board to spell that. They need to know how to spell that. Like that is table stakes. That is a crutch. I do not need they in the real world, they're not going to have a word wall following them around. That is baby. That is 2nd grade. That is kindergarten stuff. I lost the battle because I was not the principal. I was the teacher. So I had to make one. So in typical micro almond fashion, what I did was I put those stupid words up on the wall, which I had to because it came like in a kit that we all got given by the district. But for my border, what I did was I took shivers of every piece of border that I went around to all the teachers actually in the whole pod. We had 8 teachers in the pod. And I took like a shard of each border, like from every holiday and every piece that everybody had. I had like 92 different kinds of border and took like maybe 18 inches from every person's border. And it didn't even match up like the little wavy parts and just made the ugliest edge around that word wall that I could find. And I cut out the letters word wall like in all different fonts and colors. It was the ugliest board ever. And my principal thought it was hilarious. So anyway, that was me. Okay, back to the feedback. Yeah, sometimes can't get mad, get even. Trisha, who's actually in St. Louis, and hopefully we're meeting up for dinner this week. Got to make it happen. It's a little crazy this week, but I think we can do it. And they've been to the Arch, they've been to the Science Center, they've been to the City Museum. They're doing it right here in our town. She says, we tend to attract Orioles in Wisconsin, which I count as a blessing, as it's a lot easier putting out grape jelly than having to make the sugar mixture for a hummingbird feeder. Hubby is economical, so we don't buy the pre-made stuff. Okay. Did I tell the story on the, I know it's Mike in the Midwest, but here we go. Did I tell a story about spilling the hummingbird juice the couple days ago when I came home from Taco Bell? Okay, real quick. I went to Target because I pre-ordered my Coke Zeros with Riley in the back of the Jeep. No doors, no windows, just the Jeep, Riley and I. So I go into Target, get my 4 Coke Zeros. They put them in the trunk. Go to Taco Bell, get my Taco Bell. Riley always goes with me to Taco Bell. They love seeing her in the drive-thru. Anyway, we get back. I go to put my 4 Coke Zero 12 packs on we have a rack in our garage, and I go to put them on the rack where we keep them out in the garage. And on that rack, on the very top shelf, it's about a 8-foot rack. The hummingbird juice container is up there. I didn't realize that. When I went to sit the sodas down, I must have rattled the rack, and the hummingbird container juice falls down onto the floor of the garage and like blows, it kind of explodes. And I don't know if you know hummingbird juice, it is bright red. Well, our door to come in from our garage into our house is white. So this hummingbird juice kind of exploded, and it was red all over the white door. Now, my wife doesn't know this. I cleaned it up before she got home. I was the only one home. But it looked like a murder scene because it would look like blood because it was bright red. But I know I missed some spots, and I was getting ready. This was Monday because I had to come straight back. This was yesterday. I had to come back straight down to do the podcast, and she never did say a word about it. Now that I think about it, so I must have cleaned it up pretty well. But it looked, if I'd have left it, it would look like somebody came into our garage and like murdered either me or somebody. So I should have just left it to see what she said, but she'd have probably come flying in while I was doing the show just to see if I was still alive. I guess she could have just gone on Facebook or YouTube to see if I was on the air. But it was one of those things. It was wild because it just got all over everything, and it got all over the garage floor. I'm surprised we don't have hummingbirds all over my lawnmower because it's on my lawnmower tires. But yeah, it's crazy. But I have had a couple hummingbirds come by outside the window, which is a blessing. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling today. Hope you guys don't mind. Back to Trisha. She says, in the summer, we try to keep our daughter on a schedule. She attends day camp and still has swim practice. We also order her school supplies through her school at the end of the previous year and order uniforms online. So that means no back to school shopping. God bless you. God, that's perfect. The only real sense that school's approaching is when school supplies start to pop up in the stores. On a completely separate note, you and Scott discussed your radio names on the main podcast. I don't have one for myself, but I love the nickname the kids at my hospital give me. I'm a dietitian, and they call me by my first name. Dietitian plus Trish equals dietitian. I guess that I was made for the career. I like it. Dietitian. That's perfect. Again, if I was on the radio back in the day, I said I'd be Lefty Michaels. I was a left-handed pitcher, and Mike's my first name, so Lefty Michaels. There you go. Thanks, Trish. Hope you're having a good time in the loose. Stay hydrated. Stay cool. We'll have to meet up in St. Charles here for dinner. And finally, Dennis, we had a great conversation Sunday night on the live show, which you can hear Thursday on the feed. Says, hello, Mike. I'm glad to hear y'all had a great cruise on the Wish. I can't wait to cruise on her again sometime in the future. As for July, I'm of the mind that summer is half over. For me, the sweet spot of summer is June and the first week or two of July. My summer vacation is usually in those first 5 or 6 weeks of summer. Plus, I've usually traveled to visit out of state family in that time. Once mid-July rolls around, it's back to planning to get the kids back to school and prepping for fall work projects. Not to mention in Texas, this is usually the hottest part of the year, and it's hard to enjoy the outdoors with temperatures regularly over 100 degrees. I'm not wasting the time, though. My oldest will be back out of the house in less than a month and back at college, and I'm going to make the most of every day he is home. That's exactly what you got to do, Dennis. I'm so jealous. I miss those days with Paige. She's gone all the time now. Now she's a big girl and has a full-time job. I wish she was still here. But yeah, enjoy those days and stay cool down there. It's got to be hot. It's going to be hot here. But man, I love hearing your guys' feedback. This is my favorite part of the show every week. So if you have feedback on this show or any other shows, patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast. I'll be sitting here waiting to read it next Tuesday. All right, real quick. You want to stay cool in St. Louis in the 80s and 90s? What we did as kids, I'm talking like middle school, elementary school, middle school. We went to the Waterslides. Now, in my town, I grew up in a town called Florissant, Missouri, which, by the way, I used to watch Live PD. Remember that show that I used to talk about on the podcast all the time? Well, now it's on another show, a channel called Reels, and it's called On Patrol Live. They kind of redid it, but it's the same people. Last week we're watching it and there was a question. Somebody wrote in from Florissant, Missouri. I was like, "Ooh, my old hometown." Anyway, so when we were kids, we had passes to the little local municipal swimming pool. I never liked to go there. It was called Bangert Pool. I've talked about this on the show before. My mom and my sister loved going every day. I'd go to the library and just read, or I'd ride my bike around the park and shoot baskets. And I'd go into the pool sometimes, but I wasn't a big swimmer. However, I did like going to the water slides because they were kind of fun. We had 2 water slides in Florissant. Now, we had actually 3 in St. Louis, in the greater St. Louis area. And this is the one that I didn't have experience with, was one called Wet Willie's. Now, Wet Willie's was far from our house. It was on the way to Six Flags. It was probably about 45 minutes from our house. And it was down on Interstate 44. And the only reason I bring this one up is because it was kind of legendary because this was in South County and I lived in North St. Louis County. And you always saw it when you went to Six Flags. You always wanted to go there because Interstate 44 in South St. Louis County was kind of, in that part of the county, was kind of carved, like they blasted part of the rocks and built the interstate right there out of kind of where they blasted some of the rocks out. So you can see like cliffs. Well, Wet Willie's was built right into the cliffs, and you could see these channels that the slides went through, and it just looked scary because it was up high and you could see the channels, and just the name Wet Willie's looked really cool. It was in Valley Park, was the name of the city. So that was kind of legendary. And they always had a big marketing campaign on the pop radio stations. The pop radio stations played a big part in the water slides back in the day too, in the late 80s, early 90s, because they were huge advertisers in the summer. And you would always hear them when you went to the water slides. You would hear Q106.5. That was one of the big radio stations you would always hear playing at the water slides, or you would hear Hot 97.1. Those 2 radio stations always playing kind of that hot mix where they'd only play like the top 30 songs and just repeat them over and over. That hot, format. And, but it was always exciting to hear that because you'd always hear your favorite songs basically once every couple of hours. And a lot of times the radio stations would send out their DJs or their on-air talent to do promotions, to give out t-shirts. They'd bring out their vehicles, whether it was a Jeep or some kind of a hot rod car, give out t-shirts, and they were always doing promotions. So it was a tight connection between your top 40 radio station and these water slides. Okay, so that was Wet Willie's. They did a lot of promotion on the radio. Now, kind of the middle of the road one I want to talk about was what was called the Grandview water slide. This one was the one that was closest to my childhood home, where I grew up before 7th grade. This one was, they put it in basically the parking lot of a shopping center. And this one was pretty tame. This one really catered to families. And it was in the Grandview Plaza shopping center. There was a bluff And what they did for this one was they made two slides, but this one they just took and they just dug into the ground two channels, and it weaved down, and each slide was probably, I would say, shoot, I don't know, terrible, probably 1,000 feet long, not very long, probably less than that. And basically what they did was they just poured concrete into the ground, dug it out into the earth, like, made a snaky kind of curvy little thing, covered it with concrete, painted it blue, made it slick, and they made two that went kind of next to each other, and that was it. It wasn't fancy. There was like a little hut at the top. There wasn't like an arcade. There was a little pool at the bottom where you splashed in when you got to the bottom, and some stairs back up to the top. This little parking lot. There was not much to this at all. I don't even remember the name of it. I call it the Grandview Waterslide because it was in the Grandview um, shopping center, but I don't remember much about this place. However, my mom would take us here a lot because, again, it was close to our house. And this is where we went again before we moved to a place called Fox Lake between in the summer between 6th and 7th grade. So we went here before I was in middle school. And it was a fun water slide, but there was nothing fast about this water slide. It was very family friendly. But I mean, as an elementary school kid, it was just fun. Just two basic water slides. It was just concrete. It's just painted concrete. You go down, it was water. It wasn't like high, it wasn't fast. It was just a little water slide, and it was fine. Okay, so that was fine. But now let's get to the Aqua Jet. This is where the memories were made. So when we moved to Fox Lake, which is where I moved before 7th grade and lived there through college, this there was a major intersection down the street from my subdivision. It was Newhouse Ferry and Lindbergh Boulevard, which was like where everything was back in the day. There was a Kmart there. There was a Schnucks there, which is a big grocery store. There was a Wendy's, Taco Bell. Everything was there. Taco Bell, the Shell Station, the Firestone, the McDonald's. Everything was at the Marshalls was there. The Denny's, the Lee's Chicken. Everything was at this corner. But back in actually my school that I taught at, Wedgwood Elementary, boom, right here. I mean, Wedgwood Elementary, where I taught elementary school, probably 200 feet from where Aquajet water slide was back in the day. Now, of course, I didn't even realize this because I was like in 7th grade to 10th grade when this was all going on. I could care less about the elementary school. I had no idea that I'd be teaching 6th grade there, meet my wife there years later, but it was there. Anyway, there was this water slide, and I am not kidding. It was 5 stories tall. It's like, I got to go back and find pictures of this because I've never gone back to try to find pictures of this, but it was behind the Wendy's and the Denny's, but it was right behind the intersection of these two major roads in our town, Newhouse Ferry and Lindbergh Boulevard. And I don't even know what was in the building. Like it was a big platform. There had to have been something in there, but I guess there wasn't. But it was a big, tall kind of rectangular prism about 5 stories tall because it was the biggest thing around. And there were 2 fiberglass slides at the Aquajet. And there wasn't anything else really around. There was not a lot of these places that I hear people talk about. They had like arcades, it was like a putt-putt. They had like a mini golf place. It was just a water slide. There was like a little trailer at the bottom where you pay your money and you would get your mat because they had mats and they were 2-tone mats. It was like white on one side and the other side was color. Some of them were red, some of them were blue. And I think the mat color was determined by if you had like an all-day pass or if you had an hourly pass. I think that's how it was. But we'll get to that in a second. But the Aquajet itself, like it kind of dominated that intersection. And it was super exciting to go there because obviously as a middle school kid, like that was the jam in the summer, especially this time when it was hot. And I remember back in the day, you could go all day for $8. And $8 is a lot for like a middle school kid, right? But here's the thing. My friend Steve, which I've talked about many times on the show, he passed away probably about 10, 12 years ago. He was my catcher all through elementary school and middle school. He was killed by a drunk driver. He was also a PE teacher. But we were joined at the hip we played ball together. I was the pitcher. He was the catcher. We were best friends. We would always go up to the Corey League and umpire the night before, and you get paid on the spot. So we do a couple games. We do a 6:15 game, then we'd umpire an 8:30 game. So you do a double, or we'd cut grass. We do whatever. We worked hard. We'd do something, but we'd earn that $8. And then the next day, we'd go up there. I think it opened at 11, and we'd get an all day pass, and we just ride and ride and ride. And it was just so much fun because they'd have Q106.5 or Hot 97 playing like on their loudspeakers. They had a soda machine. They didn't have a snack bar, but they had a soda machine. So you get like, Shasta, or you could get, Mellow Yellow or Mountain Dew or whatever you wanted, but you would just ride those things. And here's the thing. I told you it's 5 stories tall, fiberglass slides. This thing was fast. I mean, it was lightning fast. And there were ways, of course, because we're middle school kids, we always thought we could figure out a way to make it even faster. There were ways where you could kind of cut the water flow if you sat on the very front of your mat and kind of like you wanted to ride in front of the push of the water. And if you did that, and I still remember this to this day, like if you got on the very front of that mat, it would kind of cut off the water flow to where the water stayed behind your mat. And you would get way up on the top of those walls. And there were stories. Now, again, who knows, right? I don't know if this actually ever happened. But I mean, of course, people said like somebody went so fast, he flew over the edge and like died. Because, I mean, again, this thing was super tall. And I mean, there was a big sign, Aquajet, on the side of it. Like everybody, it was busy. And it was like a big deal. And so we went up there a lot. And I remember Steve and I, a lot of times, like I remember this had to have been like an 8th grade or 9th grade because we weren't driving yet. I'd ride my bike over to Steve's house because he lived in the next subdivision over. So I'd get on my bike, ride to Steve's, pick up Steve. Steve and I would ride our bikes. And sometimes we go to there was a Chinese restaurant next to the Kmart. We'd go get Chinese food at the Kmart, at the little St. Louis chop suey. And then we go up to and then, get our passes up at the Aquajet and just ride all day. And we'd have a blast. And we'd ride until our ball game that night or practice, because we either had a game or practice or we'd umpire. So we'd have to leave at like 5. However, some nights it was open like super late. Now here's another thing we'd do. So if we had like a 6:15 game with our baseball team and we won or something, we had a big game, because it'd be open till like midnight. A lot of times what we'd do as a baseball team, we'd be like, yeah, big win tonight. So we'd go up to the Aquajet after our game as a team and get like an hourly pass. And so you have this whole baseball team. It's like the bad news. We were like the bad news Bears. We were the Florissant Tigers and the Eagles, because we were sponsored by the VFW after that. So we were the Eagles. And so you have like these 15, 12-year-olds that are just troublemakers, a lot of us, all coming into the Aquajet at like 8:30 at night. We're dirty because we've been playing baseball, but we all like, grabbed our trunks, I guess. I don't even know how I can't remember. But we get up there, 8:30 and buy like an hourly pass, and we're just tearing the place up, and we're just flying down these flumes. And I just remember Scott Weber, like he was always a troublemaker, third baseman, catcher. He's super nice now. Like he's got a kid that's super nice. But I mean, he was always like, he stole his dad's van one time when he was 12, driving it around. Like he was 12, but he was always the clown on the team. But I mean, always getting kicked out by the lifeguards at the bottom for just breaking every rule there was, like standing up on the mat. This place was dangerous. Like when I look back, my biggest memory about the Aquajet is like, how in the world did they ever get insurance for this place? Because I mean, I'm telling you, every time you saw somebody on this thing, they were up on the very top of these fiberglass like slides, these channels. People probably did go over the edge. I don't know. Like, because I mean, I would like to push it to the edge, but I know you probably could have. It was wild. Like back eventually it closed and they knocked it down because, I went to college and moved out of that area. But you look back, like and say, God, how did that thing exist? But man, we had the best summers at the Aquajet water slide. And it was like there and gone. It was probably only there maybe 5, 7, 10 years. But and most people right now that live in Florissant, if you said, remember when that Aquajet was there behind the Denny's and the Wendy's, they'd be like, what? There was never a big old water slide. There was, and it was huge, and it was fun, and we spent so much time there. And man, it gave me some of my best memories because we'd umpire, we'd cut grass, we'd take that money, and then the next day we'd spend it on an all-day pass at the Aquajet and get our little mat and just think of the exercise that we got though. Like going up those steps over and over and over and over, and just God, we had so much fun. So here's what I want to ask you. Did you have a place like this? Not, this wasn't a Six Flags. This wasn't a Disney World. This was like a one-off. Like this was somebody that put together a place that was kind of shady, but man, was it fun. And it was just called the Aquajet. There wasn't like another one. It wasn't a franchise, but it was there and gone. But man, did we have so much fun there. So let me know, what did you have in your town that was kind of like this? Maybe a hangout that you had in the summer. I want to hear it in the comments. Patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. So I'm going to slide on out of here and hope that you guys have a great week. So until then, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.